My name is Zandra Morrison. I'm the Deputy Manager for Acis Youth. We offer an office-based counselling service to adolescents and also have a school-based counselling team who currently work within 5 primaries and 9 academies in Aberdeen City. We also have a team who have recently started working at Aberdeen College. Prior to my working for Acis Youth, my background was within childcare, social work and education before I became a counsellor with children and young people. Alongside my professional role, and as importantly, I'm also a parent who has survived the adolescent years. My aim is to help you to think about what might be helpful to our children as they navigate adolescence, and hopefully in turn that will allow us all to have an easier ride. I don't intend to go into great detail about the neuroscience which informs what we know about the teenage brain, but I will look a bit at the stages of development to help us to think about what is going on for our adolescents, and then think about what we might be able to do to make this stage a bit more bearable for them and for us. The brain develops from the bottom up and starts with the brainstem. This lays down the foundation from which we learn the basic skills we need for survival. For example, breathing, eating, sleeping, walking and talking. This is then followed by the limbic system. This is where your memory develops, where we learn about attachment and emotions, and then the cortical area of the brain develops. This is really the thinking part of the brain. The last part of the brain to develop is the prefrontal cortex. This part of the brain controls our impulses, our ability to reason, our moods and emotions, and also allows us the ability to plan. This part of the brain begins to develop in our adolescence and continues to grow into our 20s. So if we think about what is going on in the adolescent years, alongside puberty there is an enormous period of growth, physically, emotionally and intellectually. From the ages of 12 to 24, there is a burst of growth and maturation taking place as never before in our lives. It's a remodelling phase, if you like. As a young child, we are like sponges, soaking up everything. When we get into our teenage years, we start to pare that down and start to focus on the things that really matter. We might be really interested in learning a specific sport, how to play a musical instrument or learn a language, or more likely how to play the Xbox well. So all our attention gets focused on that and the brain starts to specialise, taking a use it or lose it approach. Whilst this growth is going on, the brain does not have the ability to regulate itself. So it may feel when our children are going through their adolescence that we as parents are reliving the toddler years with them, as they are struggling to manage their mood, emotions, behaviour and thoughts. But now your toddler can match you both in height and determination. As a young child, your job is to play, and it is through playing that we learn about the world. The main job of adolescents is to figure out who they are and their place in the world. The growth of learning that comes from this process is critical to their being able to leave their family and go out into the world as a well-adjusted adult. Not as easy as it sounds. So if we were to write a job description for adolescents, what might it look like? You must have the ability to test the boundaries, change your appearance, take risks, explore the unknown, achieve independence, rebel against parental control, have your own opinion, join a peer group, and seek out romantic relationships. Not all adolescents exhibit all of these behaviours, but it is a time of intense emotional feelings. Adolescents process information with the part of the limbic system in the brain called the amygdala. So they're not thinking about things as much as they are feeling things. They're having a gut reaction linked to both the fear and pleasure responses. Risk-taking is a part of life, and it is very much a part of adolescence, but it's not really about rebelling, it's about identity formation. Taking risks helps us to learn what we are capable of, as well as discovering the joy of new experiences. Remember, their prefrontal cortex is still developing, so that means their brain has trouble controlling the risk-taking impulses and therefore understanding the consequences of their actions. As adults, we think with the prefrontal cortex, so we think before we act. Well, maybe not always. But generally speaking, we respond to situations with good judgment and an awareness of long-term consequences. With the primary goal being to achieve independence, our adolescents need to push away from their parents. It might feel like they don't want to spend time with you, They're not talking to you about what's going on for them like they did before, when they were younger, or it might feel like they are disagreeing with everything you say. This is all normal at this stage of development. The need to push back is genetic, so try not to take it personally. At the same time, they are increasingly aware of how their peers see them. They may desperately want to fit in with them, as it is their opinion which becomes much more important to them than yours. They may try out different looks or identities as a means of helping them to figure out who they are and what's important to them. They're beginning to form their own moral code. Previously, they would have been happy to conform. Now they feel they have to assert themselves and their opinions, rebelling against parental control in order to separate themselves from their parents. Whilst it might look like they are enjoying this newfound sense of power and freedom, they will often crave being a grown-up one day, whilst the next they want to be a child again, with none of the pressure and responsibility of being an adolescent. Think back to your own teenage years and what might it have been like. Maybe you felt you didn't fit in, that you weren't accepted by your peer group. Maybe you were very body conscious, or seen as a geek when you wanted to be one of the cool crowd, or you were really conservative in your appearance but wished you had the confidence to go wild. So what can we do as parents to help our children navigate this difficult time in their lives? Practice empathy. Remember your own struggles. What did it feel like? This will help you to empathise with what they might be feeling. Expect mood changes. They will find them unexpected too. Remember what it's like. 1 minute you're feeling on top of the world and the next the world is falling down. Sometimes that's about a sudden unexpected surge of emotions, or you've realised you've not been invited to a group outing with friends, or the boy or the girl you like likes your friend better. Support, encourage and respect them. Don't belittle them. Teasing can be well meant but can feel very hurtful. Remember, they can be feeling quite vulnerable when trying to figure out who they are, even if they are working really hard at looking self-assured. Be prepared for conflict. It's part of the separation process. Pick your battles. Is it worth falling out over picking towels off the bathroom floor if you have bigger worries to think about? Avoid persistent questioning. Let them choose where to get help. They might find it easier to talk to a chum's parent or an extended family member. Don't take it personally. I know that it can feel really hurtful that they prefer to speak to someone else, but sometimes it's better that you don't know everything, and hopefully whoever they are talking to will know if you need to become involved. Talk to them, not at them. Find out what their opinion is. Help them to think for themselves. Listen to their feelings. Their feelings are as valid as yours. Tell them you will be there for them when they want to talk. Try not to assume that you know what's wrong. Pick a good time to broach things. You will never get a good outcome if either of you are tired or hungry or in a rush. Make sure there are no distractions and that you have time to spend with them. Set boundaries. They need limits and boundaries to keep them safe. Decide what your bottom line is and stick to it. You will all have been on the receiving end of "it's not fair, I don't have to listen to you, you're not the boss of me." That was a favourite in our house. Sometimes that's a delaying tactic to avoid what you have asked them to do. Tell them what's acceptable and what's not. Don't give in. Stay calm. Walk away if you need to, and sometimes ignoring something can be the best response. Many of your adolescents would welcome being able to say, "I'm not allowed to do that, my parents would go mad." It's a good get-out clause when they're feeling pressure to do something they may not want to do. You know your child and when this is the response they are looking for. Ask what they think is reasonable. Say what you think, then find a midpoint. Problem solve together. Show them when necessary you can make changes too. Be calm. If you are shouting, you've lost control. By being calm and rational, you are showing them how to control difficult feelings. It is important to keep your cool when dealing with a cranky teenager. If you raise your voice, that will only make it worse. Remember back to when they were toddlers, when they didn't have the vocabulary to explain what they needed. By knowing them and thinking about them, you were able to help soothe those feelings of upset or anger. Your doing that helped them to manage those difficult feelings then, and the same skills apply now. You are helping them to regulate their feelings, although it was much simpler to figure out what was wrong back then. Parents and carers should work as a team. If you have different views on how things should be handled, agree your strategy away from the kids. Even then, that doesn't always work. As parents, we do the best we can. We don't always get it right, but there is always an opportunity to repair things, to go back and say, I didn't handle that well, and can we talk about that again? If we can make sense of our own actions, we can then make the repair, and that will have a positive impact on our children. Talk about the big stuff. Keep the dialogue open. What they say might terrify you, but at least you know about it. Be clear you want to help. Don't judge them. Say you're sorry. This doesn't mean you're taking responsibility for everything, but you are taking responsibility for your part in it. Count to 10. If you feel like you're losing control, take a breath and step away. Let them know that they can do this too, and you'll come back to it when you both feel calmer. Avoid criticism. Describe what you think the problem is. Instead of saying, why did you do that? Think about phrasing. It might be better to say, by doing that, this might happen, and that worries me. Or by doing that, it might make things difficult for you. Respect their privacy. The rooms, texts, emails, their phone calls should all be private. You don't need to know every detail of their lives. Make them responsible for their own rooms. Ignore the mess. Close the door. Don't go into the room, unless you can't find a glass, because there's a good chance they're all in there. Reward them for being trustworthy. Share your family values. All of the stuff I have spoken about so far is what we would term normal adolescence. And that's the reality for a lot of our children. But there are times when things may get difficult and they may need additional support. You might be worried about possible depression if your child experiences continuous low mood, share feelings of hopelessness if they are frequently tearful, constantly irritable, or socially isolate themselves. You may worry they are self-harming if there are unexplained cuts or bruises or burns, or they're keeping themselves covered all of the time. They may show signs of low self-esteem, thinking they're not good enough, or blaming themselves for all of their problems. You might be worried about eating disorders if they are letting you think they have eaten when they haven't, or they're being secretive about their eating habits. They may get anxious, upset, or guilty when asked to eat. You may worry they are using drugs if they lose interest in their hobbies, their sports and activities, if there are dramatic changes in their behaviour, like excessive tiredness, loss of appetite, bad skin, or red eyes. This is not an exhaustive list, just some signs to look out for. If you feel they need additional support, talk to them about that. Ask them what they think. There are lots of available supports online you could point them to, or if there's a counsellor in their school, suggest they make contact with them, or maybe your GP practice can offer medical support if that's necessary. Don't be afraid to ask for help. As we move forward, I think we need to acknowledge that whilst being a teenager is difficult, no matter what, being a teenager during the pandemic has been even harder. Schools were closed, events were cancelled. They were missing out on big moments in their lives as well as everyday moments, just like walking to school with a friend. For parents, it was also more difficult, as we had to manage our own feelings or worries about what was going on. We might have had concerns for our health, there might have been a loss of income, or been unable to access family support that we had relied on previously. All of that has had an impact on our everyday lives. If our children or ourselves are feeling anxious, let them know that's completely normal. It's how you're meant to feel when faced with a threat. We need to allow our children and ourselves to feel our feelings. It's okay to be sad that you missed out on events or that you haven't been able to spend that time with family and friends. It takes time to recover. As parents, we do the best that we can. Adolescence can be hard work for us and for our children, but it can also be an amazing time in their lives and ours. We can see things through their eyes, watch them discover what they're passionate about, give them the confidence to be who they are and not who we expect them to be. We can help them to develop the life skills they will need when they eventually leave home. And remember, your time will come. One day you might be able to sit back and watch them try to parent adolescents of their own.